special meeting of the Charter Revision Commission to order. It is 6:32. Roll call, please.
Right. Laura Ray is absent. I think she'll be late. Kate Boulay is absent. Tom Cremona.
Here.
Marilyn Cressati. Here. Justin Elliman.
Here.
George Shaw.
Here.
Greg Stokes.
Here.
And Rich Doiney.
Here.
6 members are present, 3 are absent. Well, actually 2 are absent, 1 resigned. Gary had to resign. He is purchasing a house down south, so.
See if that makes the agenda for tomorrow night's town council meeting, right?
I don't think that it will make
I
it.
didn't
It
see
was,
that.
no, because it was too close to the meeting. Yeah, we
Okay.
need more time than that.
Item number 2, approval minutes from the public hearing on March 23rd. We have a motion to approve the meetings.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Second. Any comments, discussions, corrections? Sensing none, show of hands for approval for the minutes. 6 in favor, none against. Thank you. All right, I did pass out another updated sheet. I did make a mistake on it, probably my eyes. Section 5, we're starting that tonight. I'm sorry, chapter 5, we'll start that tonight. We got through the first 4 last week. There was a request before the meeting to consider a college game that starts around 8:15. So I think if you're all okay with it, we'll target being out of here by 8-ish. Unless we're really in it deep and we can knock it out. And
Well, I'm in a jam because I'm from Michigan. My brothers are already on my case because I'm going for UConn and they're going for, so we won't be talking first.
I know the minutes weren't approved from last week's meeting, but we did have some follow-up items. I don't know if Sheila's here. You got anything back? Town attorney, good opinion on the Board of Ed?
Oh, no, that's too soon for
Too
the
soon,
town
okay.
attorney, yes.
Okay.
And the minutes, I did upload them today. They were finished.
Yes.
However, they weren't in time for they'll be on the next
Yep.
meeting's agenda.
Okay. All right. So then we will just continue with chapter 5.
Did we hear anything about the stipend yet, or are we still waiting on that info as well?
Still working on that. What I did get, however, because we've been calling around to the local, and so a lot of the surrounding towns are first selectmen, so they have selectmen. And generally, the first selectman, is a fully paid, benefited position. So, you see a lot of different numbers for that. The only one that really would be comparable that we found so far is East Hartford. And they are getting $4,000 per town councilor, $4,400 for a deputy, and $4,800 for the chairman.
Well, we'll continue that. One thought I had on that, and we can just discuss it now. We can table it until we have some more information if you want. One thought I had, in lieu of compensation stipends, what if we consider setting up a spending account for each town councilor, let's say $500 each, so that they can participate in town-related activities or events, right? An event that would directly support the town residents or town organizations. Because I do know the town council does get a lot of requests for them to attend various events. And personally, I like the fact that they don't get paid, because then if they got paid anything, then it might create an open door for people to complain that they're getting paid, but they're making all these decisions. And that's where I was struggling with it last time, versus just having a spending account that each one gets so much that they can apply towards an expense. They have to give the town manager's office the receipts to get reimbursed, but it's for an event supporting town residents or town organizations.
So like the 4th of July dance, you buy raffle tickets, you get a receipt, you pay for the tickets, you get a receipt, that type of thing?
Something like that. Or I know, I'll use an example because I always see him on Lucian with his events, right? Supporting the veterans or something, Safe Grad. I know a lot of town council members will go to that. And that way, they can still participate, but I know there's a lot of out-of-pocket expenses if they chose to do it all. And I was struggling with the whole stipend mentality, because again, I like the fact that they can say they don't get paid when push comes to shove for the decisions they have to make. Again, going back to what we talked about with the taxes, right? Give a tax abatement, well, they make the decision on the taxes, so, Greg, you brought that up.
Yeah, I didn't like the
Right.
terms of even because
So,
of that.
and then that's where I just thought this, and whatever that number is, so well, let's consider that in lieu of formal stipends or compensation or any of that stuff. That way, they're still supporting the town. Thoughts, feedback?
I'll let other people go first.
My worry is, I don't know, I think I'd rather just let it be, here's an amount of money, you can do what you want with it, we appreciate your service. I don't know, I feel like it's more restrictive that way, and yes, I think that money should go back to the town. But then it's like, do we have to figure out everything that would qualify under it? Like, say, I don't know, there's a
Right.
conference that we send some of them to for something, do we either go, did that fall under that, can they put that under their expenses?
Well, I think the conference that we send them to, like the DC trip, that was covered,
That's
right?
covered, yeah.
Oh, okay, so that's already covered.
Yeah.
That's covered.
But I agree, like, I think that's the question, okay, so if I get a spending account, like, am I including, like, how do I define the things that the town is gonna cover? Because we haven't always covered that conference, right? Like,
Yeah.
sometimes we haven't before, and so then, like, we have to, or someone in the town or the council has to decide, like, is this part of the stipend or is this not? And then, like, that gets weird. And even while most of our events in town are not partisan, like, as soon as, like, the chair of the 4th of July becomes one party or another, then, like, I don't know, like, it just, like, I get what you're saying, like, and I do think it's totally right, I just feel like it's simpler, less overhead, less time for staff, and less politics if we just stick with a stipend, is kind of where my head is at. Just because, right, like, if I'm a counselor, I'm saying I've spent this on X, Y, and Z, right? Like, who's determining whether that's appropriate or not? I mean, right, like, Safe Grad tonight is having an event at Jimmy's, like, is it okay for me to go spend, like, my stipend on, like, 3 drinks at Jimmy's? Right, like, I don't know.
Maybe on the tips, not on the.
Right,
Yeah.
and so, you know what I mean, right? And so I'm not saying it's wrong, I just, from like being on the administrative side of government, sometimes it's just like, thank you for doing this job here. On the other side, I also think it's like, it is a job. People do get paid in other towns. It is hard, it is annoying, people put themselves out there for it, and like, I would be, as a taxpayer, very happy to just say, do whatever you want with this couple $1,000s.
Yeah, see, my point of view from this, obviously, I don't like the tax abatement because obviously what they do is, they decide the taxes, and so the terminology, I think would bite them in that. But to me, it's just a clean stipend, even if it's $1,000 a year, just a stipend. And they can do what they want with it. It shows appreciation, but they can cover. And then we're not in a situation where somebody's going to scrutinize, and it's going to happen. Someone's going to ask for, a report, FOI on what each one. Oh, they went to this. That was a Boy Scout, but that was at a church. While we're giving money to it, it's all going to hit. So all of a sudden now you're scrutinizing what they're doing. No matter what we do, and I'm in favor of not doing anything or I gave my 2 cents on it. It's just cleaner for the stipend. It leaves everybody out of it. Any type of people criticize it. And I don't think it removes the fact that someone says, well, you can't say anymore that, I'm not getting paid to do this. In a stipend's not paid. I would not look at a council member getting $1,000 a year and say, I'm paying you. I would feel guilty saying we're probably underpaying you, so that was just some of my 2 cents, so.
And like, and also like, full apologies for missing our last discussion, right? Like, I do think it wouldn't be unreasonable to put some parameters on it, like, if the council passes a such and such budget, then like, you get a stipend. If you don't, you don't. But like, I don't, if someone wanted to have that discussion, but other than that, I think it's cleaner.
Yeah, I think Greg made a point of, the good point of, depending on where the money goes, it can raise a lot of questions that can be unfortunately weaponized. I like the idea of saying you have to put it back in the town, but I do think it just creates a lot of problems if you have to justify each one.
I still don't think they should get anything. I still think that what's wrong with giving back to your community just because you think that you have something to offer to the community to make it better. And I think, it just, I think it sends the wrong message to our kids. Do we do it just because we're paid for it, or?
I mean, I guess my thing, if it's a stipend, it's not gonna be a lot of money, like
Yeah, but it's still, my feeling is there should be no pay. That's just my feeling.
I guess I just see it as we appreciate the time and effort you put in. We're not paying you enough that you can just, lounge there and do nothing. This is just a little appreciation. You do put in the work for us. When we appreciate that you put in the work for us. So this is how we as a town show, a little bit of appreciation to you guys too.
I just think it sends the wrong message. I think everything doesn't have to be a dollar sign. That's just.
Well, and again, I'm kind of in the same boat, and it's no offense to any of our town council members. And as I said last week, there's a lot of people who spend a lot of time volunteering for this town, not to take away from town council. But what about their time, right? And the entire town is, other than the town manager's office, right, in this building, we're all volunteers, right? And that's where I struggle with it as well. We choose to volunteer. There's nothing in it for us personally to be as part of this, other than our pride in the town and what we're trying to accomplish. A couple town councilors, after they saw the recording, reached out to me as well and said kind of the same thing, that we don't want it. But that's their choice, and certainly if we decide.
You decide to give them a stipend, and everybody in the town, all the other volunteers hear about it. Now they want one.
I don't know if that's certainly an extreme, but,
Well,
and again, not to take away anything that the town council do. I know they put in a lot of time with all their meetings and subcommittees and all the other things that they're part of in the town and support of the town. Again, I'm not opposed. I will agree that the stipend would be better than a spending account. I can see that.
Yeah.
I recognize the concern with the spending account side. So if it was an option of the two, I would lean towards stipend, but I still struggle with the whole compensation. And I do see it as a compensation. It's not enough, it's not a lot, but.
I guess I see your point, sometimes it feels like it could be a slippery slope. I don't mean to use the state as an example because I know we're not everyone's favorite. But right, we have boards and commissions up the wazoo that do not get paid, and state legislators that get paid, a very menial amount for the time that they spend. And I do think that's reasonable. I get I don't want people to do it for the dollar signs, but part of the reason that people can do it is because of the dollar signs at their day job, right? I feel like I can be here because I make enough money at my day job and I don't have to go work at night, right?
mhm.
That obviously I care about the town, that's my general motivation, but I don't have to go be a server after work because the state pays me enough money, and that's wonderful. And I think we get a lot of the same folks running for office because they have the means and they have the flexibility at their job. So if we were able to toss even a couple $1,000s to say we know you're making a sacrifice by not doing something else right now, thank you, I do think that goes a long way.
I think the difference is between these committees, no one elected us to this committee. The town chose us, the town council chose us. That's how most committees work. But town councilors are elected by the people. So the people get to choose, this is the person I think will do a good job. This is the person I'm willing to pay. So I think it creates a difference between people who, we're not anyone the town will know, If you go out in public knowing, you're that guy from the charter committee thing. But the town council, they kind of are the face of the town. They are chosen by the town. And I think that there's a little bit of a difference there. And why, we might choose to pay them and not, people like us sitting here.
Other thoughts? Do we want to vote on it, or do we want to wait?
I still want to wait.
I have a thought that I would like us to wait, because at least for me, a significant factor in my decision
We'll be with
will be are we a real outlier?
Yeah.
Okay, that's gonna
That's
be
fair.
really important to me.
Okay.
All right, and we're trying.
Yeah, I tried to look into myself
See the best we can
online,
get.
it's not, the information does not
You're
even
not gonna
have.
find that online.
I found stuff from the 90s, and that was really relevant to
It was
today.
a great time, but
He wouldn't know.
I barely, just barely.
70s were better.
I mean, it's not like I couldn't vote, it's not that, but
No,
I mean.
and I'm okay with waiting.
No, I think
We
we
wait a
should.
little bit longer.
That's fine.
Right.
We have more meetings.
I did want to just bring it up as a continuation of the discussion, and that was chapter 3, section 1, just as reference there. Okay. If you're all good, we'll move on to chapter 5. Okay. So, there was a suggestion to add qualifications such as experience in government law and contracts as part of the town attorney's role description, if you will, in the charter.
A suggestion or requirement?
It's a suggestion to add.
And the way when I read that comment here, my thought was, it's really right on the very top there. Here it says, will be admitted to practice law in the state of Connecticut for a minimum of 5 years. And I thought it with relevant and appropriate experience.
Yeah, I circled 5 years. I didn't think that was enough time
Oh,
personally, but I like the suggestion of the add with relevant,
yeah,
because you could have been in some other capacity with experience and then became a lawyer,
right.
right?
I guess the only thing with that, we can add a suggestion, but at the end of the day, it's just a suggestion. They can do whatever they want still.
No, the suggestion was to add the qualification.
Oh,
such as-
sorry, okay, I misheard that.
Yeah.
Matt, the attorneys, I mean, when it talks here about experience in government law and contracts, don't most of them already have that we bring on? I mean, just help me out here because, I mean, I'll be honest with you, from my experience, that's a lot of what our attorney did. I mean, we dealt with the contracts. So I don't know if that was already,
I would assume most attorneys come out of law school with knowledge of contracts and have dealt with contracts of some type.
Yeah.
The question is more, I think, related to municipal.
Yeah,
law.
that's what I was going to say is that, there are a lot of lawyers that practice a lot of parts of the law that they'll be going over contracts and doing all these things. But there aren't a lot of attorneys anymore that really specialize in municipal law.
I'm getting you.
And there really is a lot of differences in that as it relates, because I mean, just looking at a contract, you may look at a contract with trying to protect, your client's interest. But there's a whole nother interest in municipal contracts, which is the public's interest.
Right.
And there's a lot of law related to making sure that those interests are protected just as, a private business interest is protected from the town's perspective, right, So I mean, it's something that, you can bring a lawyer on and they will have basic understanding of contract law. But the question is, have they practiced it with the municipal, in the government setting?
which is a different ballgame. And most stuff for litigation, I'm talking about, that we have outside, you go outside, right?
The bigger ones,
Yeah.
yeah.
well, and you have a town attorney,
What's that?
and you have a town attorney, like, ideally, so
I'm sorry.
that's.
Do you, in your experience with bringing the new attorneys in, do you see the need to add that distinction in the charter? Or is that, again, we go back to what we talked about last week with the town
Yeah.
manager role, same thing, are we tying hands too much or?
It's, I've been in this business way too long. And, in the 90s when I started, there were a lot of attorneys that, could be corporate counsel for cities and towns. And most of those have gotten out of the business. And those were, local law firms, 2 or 3 attorneys, kind of small practices, very niche, they might be doing municipal law and the same time doing probate, right? Because those things were really closely connected. But, larger corporation, larger law firms have been taking over. The smaller law firms are becoming a dying breed. And they're even more specialized where they're not, you don't see those attorneys that could be corporate counsel as easy.
Right.
And there's a huge difference between, doing closings for, your home that you're buying versus, the abatement practices that we have to, make sure everything's in line with. And so it's just, there's a lot more today and it's going the way of large firms more than not. So, I mean, most other places I've been is what, done what we did this time with a larger firm. We had a principal, one of the partners was our city attorney, but we used the whole firm because, that attorney may just practice, labor law, but,
You have the resources.
the other partner is, corporation or environmental or, one of the other, proficiencies that you really need as part of a town attorney.
I just feel like adding something like this, like ties the town's hands more than it gives us discretion and flexibility. I feel right if I'm gonna add experience in government, I'd wanna say municipal government, and then as soon as I say contracts, I also wanna say real estate, and then as soon as I say, right, like, and then as soon as I say that, I also wanna say interstate commerce, and then my life is just going down a sad waterfall.
Well, what if we just limited the clarification to municipal government so that there's some foundation there?
But I also think, right, anyone who's done hiring, which I think a lot of us have in this room, I imagine that, sometimes you'll have a person with a perfect resume and you'll have another person who, based on their answers to questions, based on their references, has clearly a very good head on their shoulders. And I wouldn't want to prohibit that person from getting the job because they have a spectacular thought process because of what's written in black and white on paper. And that's why in something as memorialized as the charter, I wouldn't want to put this here. I would certainly give the town council discretion to consider that, but I think that's up to them.
Matt, question for you. When you have an opening for town attorney, you put out, for bid, I don't want to say bid, but you know what I'm saying. And in that, it's determined what the requirements you're looking for.
Yeah.
So that's solidified in the charters, may not be necessary because you can do that
The job
anyway.
description itself.
Right, and so,
Right.
once
It's actually
again,
an RFP.
put a job description into a 10-year document compared, maybe wise to leave it out just because of the fact of, it's already a practice to advertise for the credentials you want. And if I'm guessing, if I remember right, sometimes you get interviews and all of a sudden during your interviews, council members realize we need to be asking this questions. And when you go out for a second time posting, you may change a couple things that will fit the needs that you have. I'm just wondering if that takes care of it.
They did, just this recent hiring, they actually did a formal RFP.
Right.
So, and in the RFP, there were qualifications listed.
Right,
So it's there.
Right.
So maybe to Laura's point, maybe it doesn't need to be here. It's already
Was this
covered.
your suggestion originally, Tom?
My initial suggestion was just gonna say Connecticut for a minute, admitted to practice law in the state of Connecticut for a minimum of 5 years with relevant municipal experience. I was suggesting that, I'm actually pulling it back, saying it probably doesn't even need to be there.
Okay. Anybody feel that we need to clarify that?
No, because the most I think that we would need is suggestions, and they know that. They don't need us suggesting in the charter to be like, hey, guys, they should have that experience.
And 5 years, is that enough?
Yes,
I think
that's
that's
plenty.
Yeah. Okay. So, show of hands, no changes to section 1.
I was gonna, I had an idea,
Sorry.
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 Because how, I was gonna compare it to the town manager bit, actually. Because the town manager, they need to appoint one, right? We put in extra time for them to appoint him, but after a certain amount of time, they need to appoint a town manager. There's nothing like that for the town attorney, correct? You can just have an interim one for,
No, I mean, actually, it's very specific in this, when you read, the council shall by majority vote this meeting be held by a second Monday in December following the council election, appoint a town attorney. Now, there's been times, and just recently, where, they can't get that done, and generally, so if their intention is to keep the same town attorney, that's easy to do. But if they're going to change, and I'm thinking back when I was here last, the council changed, the town attorney was going to stay as town attorney, but was also the public safety director, and, there was a desire to not have that individual have both positions. And, the decision wasn't made until after, I think, January 1st. And so just by the nature of that, pushed us off into the next year.
Also, the town council has the ability to appoint an interim attorney until the attorney.
See, I'll tell you, we took some liberties, I think, and with past councils took liberties with that, because.
That was more my thing,
it
should we,
doesn't- This language doesn't take into consideration an interim town attorney. I mean, if you talk to our attorney's office, and they've always been of the opinion, if it doesn't say it, that means you can't do it, right? For whatever reason, this doesn't say that you can appoint an interim, but we've appointed interim. Now, I would argue that it's not an interim. You're appointing the town attorney, because, again, this doesn't say you can appoint an interim.
Right.
When you go back to the town manager, what does it say? Council can appoint an interim manager.
yeah,
Right, and so that's the problem that I have with that interim concept is, in one section, very clear that council has that authority. The other section doesn't say that. And so from my perspective, and I'm not an attorney, but reading it based on how it's always been explained to me, you don't have the ability to appoint an interim. You have the ability to appoint a town attorney. The way we've kind of sidestepped this historically and more recently is, okay, we're going to appoint them for a very finite term, but they're still the town attorney. Here's one of the issues you get into if you start getting into this interim. So let's say you appoint an interim town attorney. They make some ruling that's very controversial and ends up causing issues that we get sued on. The first thing they're going to go after is, well, he didn't have legal authority to make that because he or she is the interim, which doesn't exist in the charter. And maybe we win eventually through that process by saying, well, yes, but that's what it is. But
I think we should have clearer language on some of that stuff. Like either say the town can or can't, and if they can, define how long the interim lasts until they have to appoint an actual one.
Or renew.
Or renew, either way, kind of like, make it more like the town
I
manager.
think that would be.
Yeah, that would be
a better way
helpful
to go
based
about
on the good town managers.
So you're referring to section 2 on chapter 4, the resignation, death, or removal side of things.
Chapter 2.
It's on page 8, where we added that there's a 90-day period, acting.
Yeah, do something like that for the attorney, so there can be an interim one, but the town still has to either keep reappointing the interim for a limited amount of time until they find, an actual attorney they can agree on. Make it more like the town manager position, unless someone thinks that might be too restrictive. Or they need more or less time, depending. I don't know if the town attorney is easier to hire than the manager or harder.
So, question for you, Matt. Say scenario, town attorney resigns. Okay, say you don't appoint an interim, who runs the legal department? There are other attorneys? Is it necessary to appoint an interim?
Under the scenario where it's a sudden change, I would say we wouldn't have to do that. Although I think, again, because the charter says that you will have a town attorney,
Right.
you have to have a town attorney. But I don't think, we'll, because our our in-house attorneys can handle mostly everything. But because the charter says that there is a town attorney, I think you have to have a town attorney. And it's those emergency ones that are, to me, squirrely. The ones that happen at the beginning of a new term,
Right.
I think those are a little bit more planned. You kind of know what's going to be happening and you have that ability, in a process to go through it, and having that timeframe and, for an interim makes a lot of sense. But again, I think even in a sudden change, you still need to have a town attorney because the charter says you have a town attorney.
Well, another suggestion, they say we don't want the town council to appoint interim, or we don't want to do that. Could we have it, the town council chooses
Well,
an employee?
Didn't say that we don't want that. I'm just saying
No, if they don't.
the charter doesn't allow it.
Yeah, we could also make it say, the town council could choose someone in your legal department to act as town
Well, that-
attorney
That's the same
until.
as an interim.
Yeah.
I didn't know if we
So,
wanted
like,
to
let's
specify
not-
it.
Well,
Sorry.
no, I was looking at that chapter 4, section 2, and just, I think there's a value to specifying to your point. Again,
Yeah.
there's no harm in doing that. And I think the verbiage there could apply similarly, right? Other than, I would even say by resignation, death, removal, or failure to appoint.
Yeah.
Or contract with, right? But I don't know if they need 2 90 days. I think that's a long time for the town attorney. I think we
Yeah.
can squat,
I remember.
Yeah, that was my only
Yeah.
question, how long.
I wouldn't use the word failure, I would just use the word delay.
Mhm.
You know, when you're saying
Yeah,
by reason of resignation, death, removal, or delay in appointment.
That's very positive.
You might, for me, you might not just leave it alone, that in the situation where there's a vacancy of the town attorney, the town council may appoint an interim, and we can, how many days?
Just leave it as vacancy.
But, because the moment you begin to put from death and this, then obviously, once again, it's a 10-year document, and somebody's gonna, I have found sometimes with these kind of things and bylaws, they usually become relevant when somebody's trying to fight something. Then they're looking at the language.
Well, then why would we have kept it for the town manager?
Yeah, I think we were just saying, copy the town manager language.
Right, just copy what was there, and I think they should both be the same. I'm not necessarily lobbying against what you just said.
Yeah.
I agree, I think we simplify the town manager one to be the same, or we just take that language for the town attorney and make it the same, either way.
Yeah, but we would need to add that, or delay of appointment, because of the fact that's what we're really focused on.
Yeah.
In the event that there is a vacancy or delay of appointment.
Yeah,
Unless we want to simplify both of them.
Yeah, and just say, under circumstances as deemed necessary,
Right.
which is probably my most favorite thing. Worked for the state for too long. But like still,
So,
you don't know what's gonna happen in the future. Sometimes it's nice to generalize things and give yourself some.
But that's part of my thing, I'm thinking of a 10-year document, and I'm also thinking that usually the charter becomes in play when somebody is fighting against something, and then they're gonna.
no, that's fair.
It's just, because to me, so I always try to leave things enough flexibility so that it's not, cumbersome.
I like this. I'm gonna read something, and
Yeah.
if someone wants to make a motion on it, and we can edit it as well. Just taking what you said, clarifying that a vacancy is a vacancy, and I would say that that also covers a delay of appointment, just to simplify the verbiage. In the event that there's a vacancy, what do we call it? For the town attorney's office, do they call
In
it
the
town attorney?
office of the
In the office of town attorney. And then we'll take the rest of the council may appoint an interim attorney to serve at the pleasure of the council for a period of,
That would be someone who knows attorney stuff, just really know like how long you guys need.
I feel like just based on the, like, I know 90 days is long, but 30 days feels short, like, I just like.
I was gonna
with the-
suggest 90.
Cause, yeah, I like, just with the course of litigation and things like that, you don't know what's going on, so.
Do we want to give
And there's,
them?
unlike the town manager role, there's enough attorneys in this
Yeah.
area that they could find an attorney.
You don't say.
I mean, I would even say 90 days with a possibility of an extension
Like
Yeah,
the
yes.
for
2/3.
additional 30 like we
Yeah.
did. But I wouldn't go 90, 90, 90.
No, I like the idea of just one.
Yeah, they need to have an incentive to get an attorney, but.
So the council may appoint an interim attorney to serve at the pleasure of the council for a period of 90 days. If the position is not filled at the expiration of this 90-day period, town council with 2/3 vote, that's what we said last time, I believe,
Yep.
have an additional 30 days.
Extension.
Do you want to word it exactly like
Yeah.
you did the town attorney,
Yeah,
town manager?
We might as
So
well.
that was, in the event there is a vacancy in the office of the town attorney, the council may appoint an interim attorney to serve at the pleasure of the council for a period of 90 days. The town council may extend an additional 30 days with a 2/3 majority vote of the, 2/3 affirmative vote of the council.
Right.
Good?
Oh,
And we're going, and we
Yeah.
are gonna go backwards to the town manager and have that be the same wording? In the
Well,
event.
let's vote on this one first.
Oh, okay, okay.
Do we have a motion to accept that in
Motion
a
to
second?
So with,
Okay. Marilyn and Tom kind of tied for that.
I think Marilyn did this one.
Show of hands for that change, and this is for the interim attorney
Yeah.
capacity. Okay.
And if I could, on that, I want to talk to the town attorney about where that would be placed in this.
Yeah.
Because my only concern is that first sentence there
Mhm.
and how it would interact with that. So I just think we need.
Might have to put that after the first long sentence, right?
Yeah,
After where it says January 1st,
Yeah.
maybe insert it there.
yeah,
Because everything else talks about selecting the attorney.
right.
Would you want to have that first section be A and B, have a B section for, and just vacancy?
I don't know, I mean, I'm going a couple different ways in my mind with this,
Okay.
and that's why I think getting the town attorney involved and so, I mean, I think what we'll do is we'll make sure that what you just voted on gets in it. I just don't know what that looks like.
I mean, I'm guessing it might end up something like how the town manager section is, where it's the main section and then the separate little section for resignation.
Yeah, it could.
You'll follow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep.
Then the question came back, do we make that same cleaner language to start off with, the same for chapter 4, section 2, with the way resignation, death, or removal of the town manager? And we probably need to retitle that to say vacancy.
So in terms of a vacancy of the town manager?
Yeah.
By resignation, wait.
No, we'd take that all out and we'd start it just like we did this. In the event that there is a vacancy,
Of the
the
town
town
manager.
manager, we could eliminate by
Okay.
resignation, death, or removal. Because a vacancy is a vacancy,
Yeah.
regardless of the reason.
Okay, yeah, I like that idea.
Then the rest of it is the same, is unchanged for the town manager part, we're
Yeah.
just changing the beginning.
I think having the language be the same is good.
And then as part of that would be just changing, we can change the section titles, correct?
Do we even need to vote on that, or is something more on?
We're gonna vote on that one too,
Okay.
but we'll vote on them together. Suggestions for that title is just vacancy.
Yeah, that's vacancy.
It's all in
You
the
mean we
town
do
manager
vacancy
title.
and appointment, if we want to add more than one word, but I'm fine with just vacancy.
Okay, vacancy good?
Briefly.
We have a motion to make those changes.
Motion.
Sheila, you good with what we? Okay. Motion was made by who? Okay, and seconded by
George?
George. Okay, show of hands. Changes? Okay. All right, anything else on section 1?
No, that was my only note.
Section 2.
It was a really good catch, by the way, whoever caught that about the
Thank you.
places. That was really good.
Any, we have no feedback from that on the original chart. Anything from you all?
Let me see. A lot of these different committees, I'm fine with how they are unless someone else has a suggestion, which only seems to be in section 4.
Section 3, ZBA. I didn't notice any changes, having participated on that one for a few years now. Section 4. We have the red line in there. Any concerns with the red lines in there?
Who initially should, so I was like, did the board suggest the red lines to like approve it?
Would have come from the
This is
commission
from
last
our
time.
Yeah, commission
last
last
year's
time.
commission.
I mean, I don't see any problem with them. I don't see any problem.
Any
with them.
suggestions for that section?
It's
A
fine.
show of hands to accept the red line versions? Thank you. 6 or 7 now. Section 5, library trustees. There's some red line items, sorry, no, too many pages there. No red lines, any suggestions? Nothing from the public?
No.
Okay. Town clerk. You want to accuse yourself of this part?
Sure.
Any suggestions or concerns with that section?
No?
I'll ask our town clerk, anything that you see you would recommend?
No, I think that's kind of boilerplate language.
So I'd ask.
Thank you.
You don't want to enhance your role or anything?
Yeah.
This is the time.
Add it,
Want 1 hour?
town clerk gets 500,000 a year.
There we go.
Is this being recorded when you said that?
It was.
It is.
Yeah, totally,
Said in humor. Let's
Alright.
add that.
May want to clarify that. Say, always say in humor because.
In humor, we jest.
Clarify you were being
Yeah,
funny.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Just write the word sarcasm for anything we do.
Section 7, we did have comment from staff, add to the sentence, "and other such departments as the council deems appropriate."
I think that came out from a staff member that was wondering why in administrative departments, that it was only the Department of Finance, Public Works, Public Safety, and Social Services in the library that was mentioned there. They were kind of like, what about all the other departments? And I honestly, the town attorney and I were, or the assistant town attorney and I were talking about it. And we believe it was because at the time when we went to a charter, these were the only departments that we had at town hall.
I think adding that. a little
So, and
bit.
there's no need for all of them to be listed, I don't think, in the charter, so.
Well, that brings up a question, do we need to add anything for those other departments in the charter?
I wouldn't,
Okay.
because again, they were created by council.
Okay.
And I believe on the council section, there's a line that says the council may
They may,
abolish
yeah.
and establish.
Yep,
Yeah.
okay.
So should we just add that little sentence, just
Where was that, be at the end?
As council deems appropriate, others.
Right, where it was suggested, a Department of Social Services,
Okay, after the
Department of
libraries.
Libraries, and other such departments as the council deems appropriate.
I think that's fine, Jay.
So it's the
Motion.
first sentence.
Motion to add that.
Motion.
Okay. Any concerns? Show of hands. To accept that, thank you. Section 8, Department of Finance. A bunch of red lines clarifying, instead of saying tax collector, collector of revenue, in the first couple sections. Clarifying chairman to chair of the board or commission. The last 2 paragraphs.
I with all that, just wording.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts on that section? Okay, show of hands to accept.
Questioned the word responsible.
Where?
It was at the end of D. And shall let the purchase or contrast to the lowest responsible bidder. That didn't seem really clear to me, so we just go with the lowest bidder? Is that
Do we
what's
want to
in-
use the word qualified instead of responsible?
Yeah, I like that. I think that's what they're trying to get to your point,
Yeah,
qualified,
qualified.
right? Because that allows them to take into account all the components of the RFP.
Right, like
so-
that's what that's what we do, you could have a very
Section,
responsible person.
Subparagraph D.
We'll sell you
Fourth
oranges
sentence
instead of
from the bottom on that
apples.
one.
Like,
Right.
we-
Yeah.
Responsible
Okay.
bidder. So instead of responsible, we have a motion to change it to qualified. We have a second.
Second.
Any other changes to this section?
Just red line.
Okay, show of hands. Thank you. Section 9. What's an extra space in section 9? I see you have your red pen mark there as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um,
No,
can we go back to
Oh,
D
sorry.
real quickly? and this was caught by someone else, I believe, but when the last commission, we missed, and at least once in a newspaper having circulation in the town, because we want to remove that, because if and when the state law changes and we don't have to put newspaper notices in, we're just putting website notices. So
Do you
it
want
should
the
just
fall?
leave it as required by law,
As
and
required by
at
law.
least once in a newspaper having circulation in town should come out.
Okay,
Because that is the law right now, that it's once in a newspaper having circulation in town.
okay. Motion on that one?
Yes.
Remove that, clarification?
Yes,
Okay,
Second.
all right, and I think that's Claire who made the motion.
I feel so strongly about it.
Any other thoughts or questions on that edit? Okay, show of hands. Thank you. Anything else on that section? Okay. Section 9, Department of Public Works. Nothing from the public? No edits? Oh, minor,
And or.
Yep, and or there. Other thoughts? Good? Show of hands to accept with the, you know something, Matt?
Well, yeah, it's been a while since I've read this. So, starting on page 12 at the bottom says, any provision in section to the contrary notwithstanding, the Department of Public Works may maintain and care for buildings, school buildings and grounds, but only if and to the extent and for the period requested by the Board of Education and as approved by council. So when the schools actually did do the maintenance of the buildings and grounds,
Yep.
that would have been something that they could have asked us for. But what had happened was the town took those away from the Board of Education. So the Board of Education, unless the council, I mean, through the MOU, unless the council agrees, wouldn't have that authority to say, you no longer, can maintain the buildings for us.
Who would say that?
It would actually be both.
Both.
Yeah.
They both have to agree.
Yeah.
We have, because I was on the board, we did the MOU.
Yeah.
I was there, we changed over. You still go by the MOU now?
Yeah.
Is it renewed every 3 years or just ongoing? I don't remember how we put it, so.
Yeah. To be honest, I haven't looked at that in a long time, so I don't remember how it is
I hate
either.
to say, I think it was like a 5-year, I don't know.
It's been 10 years, maybe?
Okay, I
don't
was
know.
17 years ago, so I don't
Yeah.
remember everything I
It
did.
was less than 17 then. That's, we're good.
Yeah, 'cause I don't even remember what year we did that. to be
We did it
honest.
2008.
So is there a suggested change from your side of that? To clarify it, or?
Just because this is the first time that I thought about that, I don't have that yet.
Do we want to put a pin in that?
Yeah, if we could, because I like to just take a look at, see what's out there.
Okay.
To make sure that everything is compliant with it. I mean, that's the problem with the MOUs, the way that they're done. It kind of circumvents, because, the state allows for those things to happen. And in the end, the state law goes over our charter all the time, so it may be an irrelevant thing, and might be able to remove it. I just need to check to see
Okay.
how that's structured.
What we'll do is, when you're ready, next meeting or whatever, we come back to that.
Yeah.
In the interim, we'll just vote on the one red line update, so we get that taken care of. And then 9A, the addition of the or. And just show of hands for just that one red line update. And then Matt, when you want to come back, we can circle back with that one as well. Thank you. Department of Public Safety, Section 10. We have from Commissioner add qualification for Director of Public Safety, but I think we're going to get in the same discussion that we've had with other roles, that giving the flexibility to the hiring manager through the job description is probably cleaner than forcing
Set guidelines.
a guideline. And then we also had eliminate the Director of Public Safety position. See email, I think that was from Chief Fox. Do we not use the Director of Public Safety anymore?
Well, technically, if there isn't someone in that position, it's the town manager. Right.
Do you want that additional stuff on your shoulders, is the other question then.
Well,
It is.
well, so, other cities have been larger in here. We didn't have public works directors, right? Or public safety directors. So it's not added burden, at least from my perspective, maybe others might, because large organizations have that same responsibility. I think, there's, the two sides of this, I think, one from the perspective of like the EMS director or chief and the police chief is that, there could be another layer between the town manager and them, which would be different than the public works director or the finance director or any of these others. And so I think that's kind of where the chief is coming from is, that, that's not necessary.
Get rid of a middleman, let him just go to you.
Another thought, at least other council members in the past, kind of looked at that as, and I would say probably if you talk to previous public safety directors, is that, this provides another layer of oversight, because again, you can say that the manager has oversight, but I have oversight over every department, and if I'm concentrating on public works, I'm not concentrating on public safety. In public safety, there is a different layer of oversight there, I think, because of issues that could easily spring up. And so having someone that is there on a continuous basis would provide that extra layer of oversight.
Right.
And I think that's what the thought process in the past had been with this and why they keep it. I will say in public safety, it's only after the horse has left the stable that you close the barn door. And you wish you had that ability to do something you don't have now. So, I understand where the chief's coming from with that. I respect, what he's saying. I think that it gives flexibility to the administration and thereby giving, more comfort to councils in those times when there are issues that you could have someone that's just focusing on EMS and the police department and not, split amongst a dozen different parts of the organization.
Right.
Can I ask some questions? What does the town do, so if I'm thinking like broadly public safety, like what is I guess two questions. What does the town look like when it comes to like who in HR and or healthcare works with like the mental health or like recovery of our staff that are first responders, and like is that, is that a program that exists? I guess that's the.
Yeah, we have an employee assistance program
Yeah.
for both regular employees as well as the first responders.
Okay.
And so that usually, historically, that was handled by the police department more, because kind of going back, EMS was kind of new and was really kind of in with regular employees. But over time, the understanding of first responders, I think, improved. And we started working with actually the company that the police department used at some point. And so it was all one, it's split again. But generally, that's how it is everywhere. Is the first responders have a different here. I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but it goes a different way than regular
Like
employees.
office stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then remind me what I should like absolutely know this, but if anything has changed since 2020, who's my main point of contact for emergency management?
Right now, it's Steve Hall. Who is
Oh, still, okay.
Yeah,
So
communications.
things are, got it. Because like the reason I asked that about public safety, right, is like I get, I mean, we're having some of the same conversations at DOT right now, right? Like the state's one of the state's EAP providers is lovely for office staff, but like it is like a lot better for us to maybe think through, okay, how do I support my folks in the field? And I have the same concerns about our team, but having somebody like on staff who coordinates those sort of broader, I don't necessarily know where they go activities, whether they are for our staff or for the broader public, is nice. Do I think that needs to be called a public safety director? No, but do I see the need for like an additional sort of central coordinated person? That like absolutely, actually, whether it is emergency management or making sure different units are speaking to one another and working on programs in a coordinated way. So like, I don't like, I'm 100% not in favor of eliminating it, but would it see the utility in like broadening the definition to give you some flexibility in that regard if that's something that was needed? I don't know. I just like, I've seen roles like this take a lot of different forms.
Yeah.
So, I don't even know that needs to be in the charter, but just I think with a lot of the growing concerns in the world,
I think
having
that I'm
someone
in the
there
same
is.
boat with you. I like having that flexibility there
Yeah.
in case it's needed versus eliminating it. And again, I think it's a lot of additional direct reports for the town manager's position.
Mhm.
I think one of the questions I had, and when I think of public safety, I do tend to think of police primarily.
Yep.
Why wouldn't it fall under the police department, like public safety to me? And I'm not saying that's the right thing, but I do think that there's a value having that role, and whoever might fill it, even if they have a shared capacity with one of the other departments, to just kind of coordinate, oversee, and manage that stuff. Other thoughts?
Can I ask why we haven't had one for 10 years?
Good question.
I didn't know if it was because you couldn't find someone who was appropriate, or if it's just we never posted for it.
How long did we
because of the
have it?
salary?
It was from, let's see, it would be about a month before I started when I got the phone call that the interim town attorney appointed himself the public works director till.
Public safety director, yeah.
Public safety, yeah.
Okay.
Until after I left. I don't know exactly when Chris stepped away from that position.
It got away, we had it back in the late 2009, 2010.
It was
So I'm trying to think.
it had to be after 2015. And so he took over town attorney again.
He wore.
So it had to be right then, because I know that.
I remember.
The council did not like the thought of him doing both, so.
I
So it had to be 2016, so it was about 9 years.
Yeah, because I left the council after 2016, so it would have been 2015, because I do remember because I was on the council when it happened, so.
I mean, it's one of those positions where unless you have, so let me give maybe an example. So right now, fire is outside of the town government, right? It's 5 different districts. If you were looking to bring fire into the town fold, you would need someone to work at a higher level than the town manager on that. And so that would be a project that having that position makes sense. If there is a lot of issues in the police department, having that position makes a lot of sense. If everything's going great, doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I think that was, even when it was a position, it was a part-time position, it wasn't a full-time position. And so, I mean, in larger cities, the city manager was the public safety director, but in those states, like Michigan, there's actually law behind it that you have to have a public safety director. And so it's congratulations, we're not hiring one city manager type of thing. But
No, we called it police commissioner.
Yeah.
At Taylor, if I remember.
And so it just, it is what you make of it. We were doing a lot of things, with EMS coming on board. There was a lot of coordination with the fire departments. There was communication, true 911 communication issues in working with the fire departments, that. So that was really one of the big things that Chris hated me for, was that feature of having to deal with the fire departments. But again, there were a lot of meetings at that point, and you need someone to speak for the town in those meetings that I just couldn't be at.
So I'm gonna just ask a question, Mia. So right now, you know, obviously you're the public safety director. What's involved in anything? I don't know, was that the chief that made the recommendation to delete or stuff? So the only question I have is, if we have a position that is not doing anything, do we keep it? You know, it's like anything else. If anything is obsolete, I mean, when you talk about if there's a major issue with the police department, even if you're not the public safety director, it's gonna fall on you anyways. You're gonna be the one in front of the cameras out here in the parking lot. So the question is going down to like any other government, if you got a position that has no job description, is not actively doing anything, and I understand we always think about what could take place, you know, like you said at last meeting, you know, we have a bad actor. But planning a charter for what could be hypothetical for bad actors, to me, is not the reason to put it in there. So if it's not actively a position, it hasn't been in 10 years, do we ratify it in the charter and continue with it, or do we delete it? That's my only question, so.
So another way to say that, in my mind, is, you know, we have a director of community development and economic development.
Right,
It's not. We have a position description.
right,
We have the position.
right.
And so, you know, what are the charter, you know, why do you need it in the charter?
Right.
If there is another way to do that. And that would be my answer is, you know, it was in the charter because, again, back when they were writing charters, public safety directors were probably big things, right? You
Well,
know?
probably when they were doing it too, you didn't have a police force that we have today.
Right.
And I don't know how it was before, you know, we became a town, however it was before, but was there a time in our history, and I've only been here 30 years, that we basically were run by the state police before we had our own police department? So maybe all that was looking to the future, and I mean, because I know that if you wanted to, if you sat down with the council, you could say, I want to create this position to do this, you got the okay, you don't need a charter to do that, so.
Right.
So do we just eliminate the position, leave it to the town council? If they ever need one, they can choose to have one, and then just, you know, again, simplify things.
Yeah. I don't think you can go wrong either way, because like I said, there is a position, and, you know, if council wants to fill that position, they can fill that position. Right? They just have to appropriate money to be able to hire it, whether it's in the charter or not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking that every 10 years, people come in and, you know, there'll be somebody 10 years from now. And I think part of what you're looking at in a charter revision is what is obsolete and what is not currently being used. And I don't think you leave it in there because it could be possible. I think if it's not been used in 10 years, then it creates a line that really is irrelevant.
Yeah.
So.
Other thoughts?
Yeah, I guess my only caveat to that, right? Because I think I agree, I'm like 99% there.
What's that?
With like just scrapping it and saying like, do what you need to do, which is normally where I land, right? But I mean, I'll also say that like, in addition to being a literal document, like the charter is also like the values document, right? And so even if we wanted to say something like let's pretend the town gets into a space where we feel we really need a public safety director. I feel like if I'm a town councilor, or if I'm somebody trying to advocate for like a state grant or something, even having something written in here that says like, if circumstances deem necessary, the town council may decide to do this, like just by virtue of it having that in writing here, like sometimes that makes it easier, sometimes sways people because it says, hey, like, you know what, my residents have thought about this and they know it might be important someday, which I know is a bit of a like political grandstanding move, but like, you know, it's public safety.
Well,
So-
and I struggle because you have police, you have fire, you have EMS, you have all these important aspects. It's not just one little department, it's a lot of components that affect the entire town's safety. right? And that's where I struggle with I understand you can always create a position, it's not a big deal. But I think there's a value for identifying it as a potential if the town needs it and it's already defined versus having to have the town redefine it and what it encompasses. And it may even, I don't know, part-time coordinator, right?
Right.
Emergency services coordinator to coordinate all the different departments, whatever you want to call it, but I'm struggling with that one. Tom?
Yeah, I'm listening carefully to the conversation. I was struggling a little bit with a couple of phrases that were used, that the position itself is obsolete. I'm having a hard time with that phrasing from the perspective of the only types of things that I think may cause this position to still be needed are gonna be pretty bleak situations that could happen.
Right.
I don't think it's obsolete.
Well, when I said obsolete, I meant being in the charter for 10
Okay.
years.
Yeah.
Not-
Very good.
I wasn't saying the
Okay.
position would be
Very
obsolete.
good.
What I'm
Okay.
saying, we haven't used it, so.
Yes, okay, so now moving forward from there, okay, great, so we're all on that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Great, all right. Now, my position on whether it should be in the charter or not is, it is, I think, an important thing to capture and memorialize. If we ever get in a situation where we're gonna need somebody, I think it's important to memorialize who that person is gonna report to. And hence, I think it should be in the charter.
And what their responsibility, what is their oversight
For
responsibility?
me, the who they're reporting to is the most important. As opposed to leaving it to, I hear it, the town council could always say, I'm gonna create the position, I'm gonna hire somebody. But the town council could also say, and I'm gonna have that position report to the chief of police. They could. And the charter currently says, nope. Charter says that person's gonna report to the town manager. And for me, that's an important distinction. Just like it's, I'm not thinking of the people we have in place. That's important for me to say.
Oh, and I agree.
Right?
I agree with that, yeah.
What about if we get to the situation, we need the person, and the chief of police and the head of the fire department are button heads? And the council decides to have this person report to the town, to the chief of police.
Oh, they have to report to the town
That'd be
manager.
bad. Well, because it's written now.
Yeah, but
If
like also,
we take it out,
right, I don't think we should.
Well, the only,
yeah, so I'm still on the page of,
my thoughts
I'm
are,
voting to keep it in.
yeah, my only thoughts is unless you change the language, it says that the town manager will be listed as the public safety director unless he designates or he or she designates someone else.
I think
But
that
to
is
me,
in there.
yeah,
Yeah.
but, so, I'm just of the nature, it says, we have other departments, we have, public works, we have a public work director. We don't have a person between the public work director and the town manager.
Hmm.
So that's the only place I'm coming to is you have two divisions. We have EMS, we have police. And so in all other departments, we have director of finance, which reports to the town manager. We have, so to me I just want to, if we're not using it and we have a police department, a police chief, and we have an EMS director, to me, they should report to the town manager. Now, at a time, we have an emergency here. Say, for instance, the October storm in 2011. I remember we went through that there. If the town manager wanted to appoint a point person to coordinate emergency response for all the divisions, that can be done, without having a public safety director, so.
Oh, the
Yeah.
word you used, if we get to a really bad situation, flood, earthquake, whatever, town manager can say, I need some help, right? And I was thinking that he would then appoint.
Right, I mean,
And so maybe it's
per
the same
item or
concept.
something like that, so.
Right, he would appoint a director of public safety that would report to him, that would then coordinate all the other divisions. That's the way I think this is written. And I like that.
I think, if you get over, what is being asked for by the chief, if you say, okay, we understand what you're saying, but, I really wouldn't change this then, because again, it kind of takes care of itself from time to time. When there are issues, you have that ability to appoint that position. Then once it's appointed, you have all this,
structures in place.
As much as we call it a police department, under the charter right now, it's not a department, it's an agency within the Department of Public Safety. Just like, highway is an agency within Public Works. And so that's the way that the charter currently reads. If you take that out of there, we probably are going to have to rewrite that whole
We
section.
would have to renumber
I
it.
mean, I'd have to rewrite it.
Yeah.
Because
Because then you'd have to.
then they're not
define the
agencies
Department
anymore,
of
right?
Police.
You would have to
Yep.
make it Department of Police and Department of EMS and so I think it, not that it's not impossible to do, I'm just saying that there is a lot more rewriting that would need to be done if you remove that Director of Public Safety. You then have to think about how that's going to be. And maybe it's not that major of a rewrite, but
So,
we just have to think about it.
let's get a pulse here, just show of hands to keep it keep it in here as written, at least for now. We can come back and edit it, or, if you don't vote for the yes here, you want to eliminate that whole role completely out of the charter. So yes keeps the role in the charter.
Role
Yes.
in charter in some way,
Yeah.
yes.
I'm against.
All right,
Marilyn,
all right.
you were against?
No, I said
You were, okay,
Yes.
sorry.
Okay. Elimination of from the red line there, said director shall appoint and also may remove the animal control officer. I think that's because the animal control officer, it was suggested, falls under the chief of police. Everyone comfortable with those two distinctions? Yeah.
Did we vote on adding qualifications for the Director of Public Safety?
We did, we mentioned it briefly. I think that goes down the same thing we talked about before, leaving the flexibility in the charter by not providing some role responsibilities and qualifications. Would you say that also applies to the chief of police?
I do.
Okay. There was suggestion to change to 30 days.
So did we vote in the red line version of this?
On the top part, we're in the police right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Change to
I'll-
30 days.
I'll step in because, it kind of fits with what I was saying earlier. One of the other phrases was something like the charter can't be the thing that protects us against bad actors. And you know what? In some ways, I think it can be. I think of the charter as the, last bastion of protection. And again, it's so important that I say this out loud again. I am not talking about any person right now. I'm talking about philosophy. Right? And so when I look at that, to have a chief of police be able to suspend somebody for 30 days without any oversight sounds too extreme to me.
Was that the chief of police who suggested that one as well, or who was that?
Say it again? Say it.
I was wondering who suggested that change.
The chief of police,
The chief did, yeah.
right?
Did
And
he
so
respond?
I'm saying, at the point you're gonna be suspending somebody, right? Chief of police can do it for 10 days. That's 2 weeks, basically. But to say to that chief of police, you can suspend 1, 5, 10, 20 for 30 days sounded, again, like a bad actor to me. And so the charter should protect against
And
that.
then I think the way it's written, it does, right?
That's
what
correct.
you're saying.
So that's why I jumped in to say that kind of is where my head's at.
It's 10 days, but then you have to talk to the director of public safety, i.e. town manager, if it's gonna be enough, anything more than 30 days.
Actually, just to be really clear, it is the town manager.
Right.
It's not the director of public safety, it's the town manager. And I like that, right? You got that, right? It says right there,
Yes.
and as approved by the town manager.
Right.
Okay? So that's why, I get where the thought is coming from.
But all we're saying there is, there needs to be a conversation,
I think,
For anything
that's
long.
it.
right? And I'm sure if it was egregious, there would be no issue,
I think that's right.
right?
My question, did he provide a reasoning why he wanted it to be changed in 30 days?
I don't think I saw anything.
There wasn't a reasoning on that.
Nothing here.
Let me just,
Here.
personal experience, right, like, so I do agree there should be a conversation. I also, like, I think we talked about this a little bit last time too, right? Like, I mean, if somebody just did this, I mean, I know the charter says they can, but like, if there's a director who say like, was an at-will employee, I might be like a little annoyed that they didn't talk to me before doing, you know, right, so that's one. But like typically, if I, like, let's pretend there is an egregious situation, right, but it is like an abrupt egregious situation, I think I need to send someone out for more than 10 days. Because oftentimes if I've got an employee who's done something wrong, like these investigations can take a while. You know, I'm talking about scheduling that individual, talking about scheduling possibly their attorney, their union representation. I'm talking about town staff, like while 10 days does seem long on paper, like I really like love to be supportive of employees I work with, but also like 10 days is a very, very, very short time. And if I say, I honestly would support someone's ability to say like, you're going for 30 days, but like if something happens, we can always bring you back. Like that is true. But I want to say 30 is not actually as long as it sounds.
Anybody that has done something that we would be considering more than 10 days.
Yeah.
It's probably gonna be 30 days to get to the point where we are actually discussing with the union any suspension. So they're gonna be on administrative leave at that point.
Well, that's why I guess, right, I mean.
So two different
Yeah.
things. So, during the investigative and negotiation phase with the unions on these things, they would be on administrative leave. So.
Yes, I know what sorry, that's how I discussed this before.
This is my.
Like, we can't, I can't unilaterally make like that decision, but like, I think, if they're talking like an actual suspension for 30 days and someone is unilaterally making that decision, I don't know, like, when is the last time that happened?
30 days.
Or even for 10, right? Like, I guess if that's what we can do now, like, I can imagine you'd have grievances up the wazoo if that happened. I guess, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, what it's saying though, it's saying that if the chief is gonna do it for more than 10 days, you have to get the approval of the public safety officer, which in this case, Matt serving as that.
Well,
And if it's going to
right.
be more than 30, it has to be approved by the town manager.
Well, I'm just saying that like that, like in actual practice, getting that approval is like the bare minimum of the process, right? Like, anyway, that's why I'm like, that's all.
I can't say this is how it always is, right?
Yeah.
But generally with me, if you're the police chief and you want to give someone an oral reprimand, you don't need to talk to me.
Yeah,
If
right.
you're doing a written reprimand, you're probably not talking to me. If you're thinking about suspending someone, you're talking to me. Whether it's 1 day or 45 days, you're talking to me because the grievance process, right? As soon as he suspends them for, let's say, a day, and this even applies to written reprimands, they can appeal that. And step one is him, which, as soon as he writes that discipline, they don't have to go to him, right? So step two would be the director of public safety. Then step three would come to the town manager. And so it's in the interest of the supervisor, the public works director, public safety director, to have that conversation with the town manager. What are you willing to support?
Well, right, and it works the same for me. In fact, like, if someone gets a written warning, I sign that paperwork at work, right? And like, we've got 3,300 employees, right? Like, and so that's where in my head, I'm like, I guess like typically before I'd suspend somebody, like, I don't know a single manager or a single chief of anything that would like do that unless the circumstance was like so extreme because they have those appeal grievance and like union rights. But like, I just like not, and again, maybe I'm contemplating like the worst case future scenario here, but like, just in case someone's like not actually around or present, like I wouldn't want someone's hands to be tied. That's all I'm saying, just based on my personal experience. Like, I don't think I've ever suspended someone for 30 days. You know what I mean? So I say that so it may not be necessary to even consider it, but just like, I think,
and again, regardless of what it says here, there's protections within the process because
Right.
of the way the bargaining units, can grieve any decision that's made. And that very nature requires a conversation because again, if you have that bad actor, that's the police chief, and he wants to go suspend someone for 30 days, well, I may not agree that 30 days is the appropriate thing, and he should have talked to me. Because I'm gonna do what I think is the right thing at all times, and it may not be 30 days.
But a lot of this would end up with Steve Belinda anyways, right, from an HR perspective.
Yes.
So it wouldn't be the visibility from your,
Yeah.
right, you'd have
That's what I'm
visibility
saying.
from the organization, right,
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, I think, I think in light of what he was proposing in terms of eliminating the director of public safety, this makes sense, but if you keep the director of public safety, this makes less sense.
Yeah, I think we should just leave it at 10 days.
Could I just get clarification? So the said director shall appoint and also remove animal control. We know that the chief at the last commission meeting, said, well, this doesn't happen under the director of public safety, it happens under the chief of police. But the last commission added,
Right.
subject to the approval of the town
Right,
manager.
we got stuck on the other thing. We didn't come back to
Is that something, Matt, that, I don't know, when officers are hired, they're not subject to your approval,
No.
okay, so
Again,
that's why
I
wanted
think
clarification there.
The only caveat I'd say to that is if there is something in state statute that gives the public safety director that authority to appoint it, we just need to check that with the town attorney to make sure there isn't something out there because.
These red lines that are here were already checked
Oh, okay.
through the town attorney
Okay.
before they went to referendum.
Okay, then it should be fine then, yeah, because it just, you have old language.
And it does say town manager or their designee.
Right, but I'm just saying, is that in practice even appropriate? Because because what the chief had recommended is they just say the chief of police shall appoint and also may remove the animal control officer, period.
Yeah.
Because the town manager typically wouldn't have input on that.
No, and if they're removing.
It's not the
them,
level you would
they're-
give
They're
input
talking
at.
to me before
Okay.
they're removing. them,
Right.
so.
So basically, the suggestion on that one red line on the bottom of page 13, you're suggesting that it would stop
Just
After
remove,
right before
officer.
subject.
so this eliminates subject through designee.
Well, I make that motion. Are we ready to do that?
I'll second.
All right, so voting to approve the red lines with the modification of removing subject to the approval of the town manager or their designee.
Right.
In that last line.
Right.
Good. Show of hands. Okay. And then with that, we're gonna keep the 10 and 30 as written and also the red line and as approved by the town manager as part of that.
So moved. Do we have to vote on that too?
No, because I'm just
I think you
clarifying
did it
that
one.
it's all
Okay.
built in there. Division of fire, anything in that? That was pretty simple, straightforward. Appointment of fire chief. So it's none. Power of director. So none.
Sorry, types.
Assumption of fire protection services.
See none?
It does tell the council can do that. No change there. F, we did have a comment for the Division of Medical Services. Again, adding qualifications. Who submitted that?
That was Gary, that's no
Oh,
longer
okay.
here.
Just looking at his, we'll stick with our previous process of it not really over
Yeah. No, we're making.
expanding on the qualifications, if you're good with that.
Right.
All right, so F stays as written with one red line on the second page, relating to the merit system, adding in and as approved by the town manager. Show of hands for that. Okay. Division of Emergency Management. Any suggestions there? Okay. Time check, it is 8 o'clock. Now we'll get to these. Department of Social Services. Section 11. I had a question where it says on the second line, qualified by education and experience. I was just going to say and or. Minor modification there.
Fine with that?
Any concerns?
Nope.
Any other suggested changes? Show of hands. Thank you. Department of Libraries. Indefinite term. Any suggested changes there? Okay. Official bonds, there's some red line corrections, updates there. Any other concerns, suggestions on that section? Okay. Show of hands for accepting those red line changes. Thank you. And section 14, salaries. All in conformance with the council, pay plans. Any suggestions, concerns? Nope. All right, sensing none there. Finance and taxations, do you want to hit that or do you want to push that to next time?
I'm down for that.
That one does get lengthy here.
You're down to talk about referendum? I mean, listen.
It's like, I have a suggestion, which is I think we should stop. What I was wondering is when we do meet, we missing a meeting next week or a night, so we don't meet for a week.
Right.
So I was wondering, this thing about the referendum, I
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure that for all of us, there was an understanding of what the basic idea originally was. And I thought maybe we could talk about that for 2 minutes, just to make sure that the idea was out there. Because I think it's something we really need to give some serious thought
Talking about
to.
the structure of the referendum
Yeah.
and breaking it into.
No, not necessarily.
No.
That what the original idea was last year, I think there was confusion over what the idea was. So-
Everyone good with pausing there and starting up at chapter 6?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay.
Chapter 6, right?
Chapter 6, finance and taxation next time.
And we still got 2 done.
So this is pretty much it.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, so again, it was a very hotly debated issue, and again, I'm gonna try to do is just state factually what the idea was. The idea that was presented with that, as it stands right now, when it comes to budget time, the town council gathers information, feedback, does a great job, and can approve any level of tax increase that they feel is appropriate. It is 100% controlled by the town council. That's how it is right now. So the idea was to say, well, I wonder if there should be some limit on what the town council can do on their own, and instead say, if they recommend something above a certain level, they have to go to referendum. That's what the idea was. And the debate was over what's that level? Because there was generally enough agreement to get it passed that we should have a referendum after some point. There were arguments against it that were very valid. But the committee voted and said, okay, well, we're gonna do that, but what's the trigger point? Above what level? So when we consider this, I think we start right at that very first question. Are we in agreement that there should be a trigger point? That's the very first question.
Get it out of the way.
You're
Yeah,
killing me, Tom.
right? And then the second question is, if you land on yes, what's the level?
But, yeah, I agree with that process.
Because
Right.
all those suggested red lines with changes in dates
Yeah.
are because of the referendum.
Yeah, and so I think.
Although Matt may have some earlier dates he would like passed regardless, I don't know.
Right. But when we get to that section, my suggestion is that's what we start our focus on.
Give it some thought over the next week.
Yeah, and if we can think about that, because I think that's a really big deal. right? I think it's a really big deal. It was the last time.
Yeah.
And so we should talk about it. And there definitely were mixed perspectives. And believe me, they did not go by party lines. Okay, it wasn't Democrat one side and Republican the other side. It was a mix across the entire thing. So,
And no one agreed with me on anything. Basically, is what happened.
yeah,
It's
and,
fine.
you
No,
know,
I think, I know that was a big discussion item last time, and one thing I'm going to ask is that next time, discussion on that notwithstanding, that we finish up the last 3 chapters, so we're there. Because the 7 and 8 are very short, and not to take anything away from the importance, but if we can, so between now and then, definitely take a look at the finance and taxation, give some thought to what Tom just mentioned around that. And then we'll plan to get rid of go through all of the other chapters.
Those are much simpler, right?
They are much simpler.
Oh, and then go back around.
And then we can circle back around to all the other items that we had to follow up on, or just kind of prepare for the meeting after that, which would be kind of reviewing all the red lines together and doing another review, and then we could talk about the other plan of action following that.
yeah. And just to make sure I've got it straight, our next meeting is next Tuesday.
The
It's
16th?
16,
Yes, sir.
right?
10
Wait a
days.
minute, what's the day?
Today
The
is
6th.
the.
Yeah, we got 10 days till the next one. We got
Thursday.
So it's Thursday, it's next Thursday.
Let's see here.
That's what,
Yeah, not.
Right,
Yeah.
Thursday.
so,
Next
Now,
Thursday.
is that
It's
the
a
one,
T.
is that the one that could be canceled?
No, that,
No,
Yes.
The
That's
ninth was
That is
canceled.
the potential,
Backup.
there's a potential
Backup budget.
backup budget meeting if it's needed. So it's not scheduled yet, but it's in reserve. And so am I right in assuming that if it gets scheduled, then we would have to cancel it? And I just want to announce to everyone that I will not be here on the 16th, but my deputy will be here, Kenzie.
yeah, because what I'm asking, I guess I should do, what happened to the 14th?
maybe not if people were available for that one. No, that was the one that we canceled. That was the one we canceled because of the town.
I thought it was the 9th.
No, it was not, that's true, we had the
The
14th.
9th was canceled.
I may have messed up
Let
my
me-
chart.
Oh.
Let me
I may have
look at
messed up my
mine.
chart.
We have the 40,
We have the
Hold on, I
14th.
got it over here.
So it is next Tuesday.
Yeah, next Tuesday, because next week we
Yeah,
have Tuesday,
totally.
Thursday.
It was, I was right the whole time.
Anyway.
Absolutely.
So we're,
You did what happened.
so all these April
Yeah, ignore those
16th.
dates.
Okay.
I'll have a cleaner chart next time, without cross-outs and confusing
14.
myself.
Well, it
Yeah,
gets
the
confusing.
14.
31st,
It's confusing.
6th,
Yeah,
the
it's
9th
actually
was
very
canceled, the
confusing
14th is the next one.
And 14th won't be canceled. There's no chance of that.
14th and 16th are
Unless
both
it snows.
scheduled.
There's
It's the
always a
16th
chance.
one that may
Okay.
be canceled.
Bingo.
Alright, so planning for the
So the
14th to go over
14th.
those items.
Yeah, there we go. Great.
Yay.
And UConn basketball game
That's
or
it.
not, we're gonna finish up all 3 chapters. That's that.
This is it.
All right.
It's all on the line tonight.
That's
Motion
right.
to adjourn?
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you.